difference. How about a big hand for Julie? How about a big hand for the on-duty Metro Toronto police officers that are here keeping us safe? Now I got a call from Horatio Kane from CSI. He just had a question. He was curious as to the detectives that work in that organization. He thought maybe there might be a link between the murders of Barry and Honey Sherman and the fact that they are the largest producers of hydroxychloroquine.
Yes.
Anybody down with that idea? You think we should be on that case? Yeah, I do too.
Absolutely.
We're going to bring up a guy who's part of the group that always gets their man. And if that really comes true, maybe we'll see Justin Trudeau in handcuffs soon. He's a member of the RCMP. His name is Corporal Daniel Bulford. He's a member of the RCMP and Mounties for Freedom. And he's a spokesperson who's got a lot to say. He's a member also of our Prime Minister's personal protection detail in the past. I'm sure he had his hands full because I don't think everybody likes Justin. Something tells me. He's drawn on his critical thinking and the details that he's learned performing those duties to also draw a line in the sand, to maintain his loyalty to the citizens of Canada and his oath when it comes to personal choice on vaccine use and maintaining the integrity of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I think a guy that's been a sniper knows a few things about shots, especially ones that can be deadly. So please give a big welcome to Corporal Daniel Bulford.
This is a little overwhelming for me. Most of my conversations have been very small and one-on-one, but I'll do what I can.
We support you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to Stacey, Vince, Dr. Panesi for bringing me into the mix to come speak with you here today. And thank you to all of the groups that are banding together to push back and fight against what I see, and I believe we all see, as ever-increasing authoritarian behavior by our provincial, federal governments, and our non-elected public health officials. Now, I'm not sure if you're all aware of this, but there's actual scientific research that supports a correlation between infectious disease and authoritarian governments coming to power. For specifics on that, I highly recommend that you search the name Dr. Randy Thornhill. He recently did an interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson on his podcast called Death, Disease, and Politics. And he will specify the details of the parasite stress theory that he refers to. Now, my layman understanding of that is that essentially, if a population is subject to living in a heightened state of fear, especially for an extended period of time, they become much more willing to relinquish their liberties to the state in exchange for a sense of safety and security. And I think that is definitely what we have been suffering from in this country for the last 20 or so months. I know that there's a strong sentiment that exists that this entire thing has been planned and possibly years in the making. I don't feel I'm confident enough to speak on that at this point because I spent my time investigating other issues surrounding this COVID-19. But I definitely feel as though it appears to me and many others, that there's definitely government, media, and industry that are fully taking advantage of this period in time to advance their own corporate and political agendas. And I make that claim based on my own, I've referred to it before as my own open source investigation surrounding what you might refer to between the official narrative and the counter narrative. If you look at the official narrative, what we're seeing from our public health officials and our government and our mainstream media, I think you'll find very consistently three major themes.
Please.
Some of you may have heard me mention this before, but I think they're worth repeating here today. You have general vague statements. We all know what they are. Safe and effective. Benefits outweigh the risk. Our actions are based on the best available evidence. Well, where is that evidence? I've looked for it very hard. I've found very little to support their claim that they're acting based on the best available evidence. Even the pharmaceutical companies offer more evidence than our government does. The second theme I've noticed is that anyone who speaks or offers any information or evidence contrary to the official narrative is immediately attacked, censored, suppressed, and attacked verbally in a very condescending manner. Therefore, fueling that heightened state of fear of anyone who may risk their reputation by speaking out against this. And the third theme is the inappropriate analogies. I'm sure you've all seen them. People making the link between these vaccine products and how they're just like a helmet, or just like a seatbelt, or just like a piece of body armor. I know I've seen the seatbelt and body armor one right from my own organization. That doesn't even belong in the same conversation. Not at all. Those things have been around for decades. We know what the limitations are, what the advantages are, and at the end of the day, I can take it off. It's not something that you're putting into our bodies that we have no control over what it does afterward. Now, pivoting to the counter-narrative. When I started looking into things for my own personal decision-making, I started listening to qualified medical experts, primarily critical care physicians, people who actually are on the front lines treating this disease. And I paid attention to virologists, immunologists, vaccinologists, people who spent their entire careers in these germane scientific fields. I don't count on the media for anything, and I haven't for years. I'm a police officer, I know better. And the three things that I've found from the counter-narrative are, you have highly qualified experts who are providing excellent, detailed information and evidence. They're willing to show their work, and they're willing to put their entire professional reputation on the line to do it. The second theme I've noticed is that they're consistently fighting suppression and censorship to get their message out there to the world. That we do have alternatives, that treatments exist, that there are highly effective treatments for this disease. But they're not the interests of the big pharmaceutical companies. And further to that we can all do things to make ourselves more resilient to this disease. We don't have to sit there and live in fear. We can do things to protect ourselves beyond taking a needle in the arm. And the third theme that I've noticed from the counter-narrative is that they consistently say that we need to focus on the vulnerable. Because it doesn't matter what your vaccination status is. If you're in a high-risk category, you're going to continue to be high risk. Because These products don't offer the protection that everyone was hoping for. But then they also have a corresponding message of hope, as opposed to fear. They're not fear-mongering. They're encouraging. And they're saying that we don't have to live in terror. This disease is treatable. We don't need to divide our population and destroy our society with these ridiculous draconian lockdown measures. So, as a police officer, I spent a good chunk of my career as an investigator before I transitioned into the tactical side of policing.
Investigate Trudeau. Why don't you do that?
We're working on it. As a police officer, as an investigator, when you're trying to determine the credibility of a source or of a witness or of a suspect that you're investigating, you're not just looking at the information that's delivered, but how it's delivered and what can be corroborated, what can be proven. Well, in my analysis of the official narrative, at the worst, they're misleading and deceptive. And at the very best, they're unknown reliability. Whereas the counter-narrative, on the low end, I would consider them believe reliability, and at the best, proven reliability. And I think we're going to see them proven reliable in their information and their predictions of what is going to happen in the future over and over again. So what do we do? Well, as explained earlier, various legal actions have already been initiated. And that's an important part of this fight. Although they're going to take some time. So I'd say to the law enforcement officers, investigate. That's what we're trained to do. Lean on your agencies that you're a part of to launch official investigations. And if they won't do it, investigate yourself and expose the information and the evidence to the public. Canadians deserve to have both sides of this story, not just what they're constantly spoon-fed by the government and the mainstream media. And I would say the third thing we need to do is we need to lead people. We need to lead people on how to be brave and how to be courageous. Because that's not necessarily everyone's conditioned state. It's really hard to even just have an honest conversation with someone that you care about what you honestly believe and how you honestly feel regarding this entire situation. For fear of judgment, for fear of ridicule, it takes practice. Start small with that honest conversation with someone you care about that might not agree with you. Do non-compliant, peaceful actions in numbers. You will be more confident if you have a group supporting you. But now, like Dr. Panessa said, now is the time to be brave. We need to be brave, we need to be courageous. No more silence, no more compliance. If I can circle back to the rise of the authoritarian government, what I have learned from paying attention to history and people who know a lot more about it than I do, is that authoritarian governments come to power because the population allows them to do it. And because the police and the security forces support it and enforce it. I truly believe that if enough Canadians stand up and say, no, we're not doing this anymore, we're not going to mistreat each other, we're not going to dehumanize other Canadian citizens based on a personal medical choice, the government will lose power. They will have no power over us. If you look around the world, there's other countries that are already seeing that shift. Other police forces in other parts of the world are marching in solidarity with their citizens. And that's what we need here in Canada right now. To my active serving law enforcement brothers and sisters, I would remind you that we all have the ability to exercise our judgment and our discretion. And ask yourself 2 questions anytime you're asked to enforce something that you're uncomfortable with. Does this enforcement action violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And number 2, is this actually in the public interest? Just because some arbitrary date has passed. Section 15 of the Charter clearly states that every individual, not just the vaccinated, every individual in this country has equal protection and equal benefit under the law without discrimination. Period. The last 8 years of my career have been highly specialized, where I have spent every day at work preparing to deal with high-risk, high-stakes situations. And a major component of that preparation is an ever-evolving risk assessment based on multiple factors. Based on the subject's behavior, his intention, his access to weapons, the environment that we're operating in, contrasted by my training, my experience, and my confidence in my abilities. When I look at what the current situation that we're in right now, my risk assessment regarding what the government is doing to this country is far more concerning than any concern that I have about risk with COVID-19. I'm concerned about the future for our children's generation. I have 3 kids at home.
Yeah, we understand.
People ask me why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I have to look them in the eye. They need to know what kind of man their father was. I will conclude saying the time is now. We can take back our country. If we stand together, we stop complying, we stop enforcing this authoritarian policies and mandates and regulations. My catchphrase that I've finished every interview with so far has been, draw your line in the sand. Mine was crossed a long time ago. Draw it now, have it in your mind, be prepared to push back if they approach yours. Thank you very much.
Daniel is one, but many members of the policing community throughout the world that feel exactly the same way, that are pushing back. This is Canada. This will not be Australia. This will not be Australia, and we will fight for Australia.
Sorry, guys.
Now, I couldn't have summed it up better than Daniel has, but I'm going to give you a few words of advice for how we're going to get through this. People always talk about, what do we do? What's our strategy? What do we do? What should I do? Well, here's what you do. Understand that there is a narrative and there is a counter-narrative. And within that counter-narrative, there is some deception. There's no question that there is deception within the counter-narrative. The main narrative is complete deception, but there are also pockets of deception within the counter-narrative. So I urge all of you, when information comes your way, and there is no shortage of information in this war. There's no shortage of information. There's a shortage of discernment and wisdom. And if you are not sure when you're looking at some information, if it's real or not, do not forward it, do not pass it on. Do not pass on false information. It's inflammatory and it just weakens our cause. It makes things much worse. It creates another fire for us to have to put out. If you're in doubt, do not pass that information on until it is confirmed. So what can we do? Well, one of the best things we can do is we plant seeds, just like a farmer. You know, you're not going to get any crops growing without the seeds planted, and that's what you do. If you're going to try to convince somebody of your viewpoint by rambling on for an hour or 2 or 3, you've lost them in the first 3 minutes. They're just not going to listen. So all you have to do is ask a very simple question. Don't give the answer, just ask the question. And when you do that, you planted a seed, because you've encouraged somebody to look for the answer. At some point, they'll think about that question that you asked, and they'll want to seek out the answer to that question. I know many people that have woken up that way. That's how I woke up. Somebody just asked me a simple question, and I went looking for the answer. So plant your seeds. That's a good start. The other is to gather together in groups. Find your tribe, get together in like-minded groups, and you can work together. The problem with that is that even within your tribe, there are multiple directions that people want to go. Some people want to discuss PCR tests. Other people want to get into lab reports. Other people want to talk about statements made. Other people want to talk about common law. So there are many, many directions to go, and you have to imagine yourself when you're with your tribe or your group. It's like being in a canoe. Okay, it's not going to work if you're trying to get somewhere where you're paddling in one direction and somebody else is paddling in a different direction. Now, attacking this problem from multiple directions is a very good idea. A multi-pronged approach is very effective. It always has been, especially in the military. So if you want to paddle one way with your idea and somebody else wants to paddle a different way, the suggestion is they're going to have to go find another canoe, or you're going to have to get out and go find another canoe. But you don't put 2 people in the same canoe paddling in the opposite direction. There's nothing wrong with paddling in a different direction. That's just a different approach. So try to team up within other teams. Find other people who think like-minded in the same way that you do, and attack the problem coordinated, with a coordinated effort. Just be very careful of having 100 or 200 people within your group trying to attack 10, 15 different strategies, going in 15 different directions. Break off into teams. And you know, if certain people want to utilize one strategy and other people want to utilize a different strategy, work together in teams. You're a lot more effective that way. And then start interacting with other groups and other teams based on the information that you have. You know, in policing, police officers are not allowed to conduct an investigation unless they're authorized to do so. It's just part of the Police Services Act. You're given conditions of what you can do within the course of your job. When something rather complicated comes along, you check with your senior supervisors and you'll be granted permission to proceed or not, depending on the circumstances. As a civilian, you don't require permission to do an investigation. You can do whatever you want. It's because you're free. You have the freedom to do that. And let's not forget that 4 days from now will be a very commemorative day. Remembrance Day, November 11th, is 4 days away from now. And that day is all about the freedoms that we want to get back. So let's not forget that.
Yes, sir. Yeah.